just got done watching the greatest movie of the year, Happy Gilmore 2.
Where do we start? I think we're going to start with the plot and the story. In this story, Happy Gilmore's facing some personal struggles, and he's trying to navigate, trying to help out his family in the best way he can, as well as trying to return to golf. In this one, he's trying to raise money for his daughter's ballet class, which I think was one of my biggest issues with the movie, and that's that in the first movie, he was trying to help his grandmother stop her house from being foreclosed on, and in this one, he's trying to have his daughter pay for her ballet class, and I just don't think that it was nearly as compelling as the first one.
Yeah, it's definitely not a very original premise to the movie, especially since him having to work to pay for her college or art class or whatever it is, has to first explain that he lost all of his money and success that he had in the first film. So they spend like the first 5 minutes explaining that, which if you're a Happy Gilmore fan, I don't think you'd really appreciate.
In the very beginning, they try their hardest to set up the new plot line by destroying the plot line of the last movie and everything that the last movie worked for.
Yes, which is a very common thing, I feel, amongst like comedic sequels. I kind of said like early on when watching this, I got like very big Zoolander 2 vibes, which I don't know if y'all have ever seen Zoolander 2, but it's a really bad movie sequel specifically. If you've ever seen the first Zoolander, it's really good, but the second one is just garbage. Now, I wouldn't say this movie is garbage, but there are definitely times in this movie that makes jokes at the expense of the first movie.
Yeah, I agree. The movie definitely does do a lot of that. I think, like you said, it's very common with sequels to comedy movies to just redo jokes that were already prevalent in the first movie. And another thing that they did was they just straight up showed clips from the first movie. They did it upwards of 20 times, where they literally just copy and pasted a clip from the first movie to, maybe show the audience some nostalgia.
Yeah, it was definitely very distracting, the amount of clips from the last movie that they had. It was almost as if they're just saying like, hey, do you remember that better movie? I'd also like to point out that the color grading on this film is very different than that of the last film, which was like 30 years ago. So it's very noticeable when they're cutting in between the two films, and it's just weird.
The whole thing just has that very digital look to it that we see in so many movies nowadays. I think that it is the pinnacle of digital and new looking movies, that whenever you have a movie clip from a movie that was from the 90s and looks more crisp and looks more classic, and then you cut back to the digital movie, it is very hard to transition.
Yeah, I mean, especially with this being a direct-to-streaming movie, not even going to theaters, I think it really just tells you the times that we're living in. If you've been paying attention to this movie at all, then you know that there's like a lot of star power in this film. There's just literally cameos in every single scene, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of Adam Sandler movies nowadays really rely on that star power. I don't know exactly why. It just adds to it being a very digital sort of movie, not just with the way that it looks, but also just in its leaning on things like social media and trying to make golf new, and it's just all one big metaphor for how things are nowadays. In any given scene, you're going to have at least one or two cameos from a big celebrity, and it gets distracting at some point.
Yeah, they had Travis Kelce, Bad Bunny, Eminem, Post Malone, just to name a few. So if you like those people, you will probably like the movie, or at least the scenes they're in. If you don't like those people, then I'm not sure what to tell you. You probably won't find it as humorous.
It gets to a point with the cameos that it really just takes away from the scene, and I feel like it just distracts people. Whenever you constantly have cameos being fed to you, you're maybe not thinking as much about the actual movie.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like rather than writing jokes, they rely on the cameo to be the joke. So they're hoping that you just laugh at the idea that Travis Kelce is in whatever situation they put him in this movie.
To be fair, I think that worked pretty well. I think that it was pretty funny just to have Eric Andre in the movie. But the comedy as a whole, I feel like, wasn't very consistent. But I think that it was sort of carried by those cameos. I think that Eminem had a pretty funny cameo in it. I think that the time with Eric Andre and Margaret Qualley was probably some of the funnier bits of the movie.
Yeah, no, it almost seems like some of the funniest parts were when Adam Sandler wasn't in it. Just not because he's not funny, but because it almost seemed like he was phoning it in a little bit more with this movie than something he would have done, say, 20 years ago. I don't know if that's just because he's a billionaire now and doesn't care as much, but yeah, no, a lot of the parts, like the few parts that I was like laughing were parts that he wasn't even really involved in.
I also have a very big problem with Adam Sandler nowadays because I think that he just really plays up his personality. You know, like rewatching the first Happy Gilmore movie or just any movie that he was in the 90s or anything like that, it just didn't seem like he was like this at all. He almost seems like a parody of himself in certain ways.
Yeah, another thing that I want to bring up real quick is this is a meaty movie. And what I mean by that is it is packed. It is like 2 hours long, for better or for worse. I don't know who decided the runtime for this movie, but they were pushing it.
I'm not sure why people making a sequel to a comedy movie that's clearly not going to live up to the greatness of the first movie would ever want to make it longer.
Yeah, I think that's just an example of them just trying to throw in every single joke they possibly could, because I don't think we're going to get like a Happy Gilmore 3, or at least I hope not. So they were just trying to put like everything they could to the wall with this movie.
This movie's a bit of a fever dream to try and sit through, and it's just so random. Like you said, I feel like a lot of the comedy just leans on randomness, and whenever you combine that with it being 2 hours of that, it makes for a pretty big headache.
Yeah, so with all that said, what is your final review for this movie, Happy Gilmore?
Weirdly, going into this, I was excited for it. However, I feel like it did not live up to that expectation. I think I'm going to give it a 5.3 out of 10.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling. I'm going to cut off. You know what? I'm going to cut off the 0.3. I'm just going to give it a straight up 5. I think 5, right in the middle, is fair. You know, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. I think a lot of people at home watching this movie are going to agree with that because, you know, a lot of parts are funny, but some other parts are pretty cringe.
I think that with a movie like this, it's very easy to say that it's bad, but it's fun. But I think that the fact that it's 2 hours long takes away from the fun scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you'd probably say about, like, all of Adam Sandler's movies for the most part, and why Netflix is so interested to do movies with him is because he really pushes the whole fun aspect of it. You know, he always has good music in his films. But like you said, you know, when you're pushing a 2 hour runtime on something that really shouldn't be anything over 90 minutes, you're going to start messing with the enjoyment factor.
Anyways, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about the movie.